Okay. So you guys, well, most of you, from what I've heard, have gotten your exam back. Everybody wants to know what the curve looks like, the distribution. It was exactly that, kind of a normal distribution. Someone got 100. So since someone got 100, there will be no curve. You guys are all toast. But there were some bad ones down here, 20s, 30s. The average was low 60s. I'm calling it 62% for now. Not that good, right? I try to write these things with an average of 80, and I nailed it, but the TAs are really harsh. So you guys had to suffer the consequences. Not taking any blame. But this isn't where we want to be. So the grading will have to be a little creative, right? Like I have a few knobs I can turn. I can just give everybody a few points, push that number over. We can change the weightings. In case you bomb this one, you give chance to battle back on exam 2 and exam 3. That kind of gives you that ray of hope out there, so I kind of like that idea. Or I can just write the last 2 exams really easy, average of 90, and then this baby, they'll all work out to 80 and we'll be fine, right? So either way, if you hit the class average, low 60s. Low 60s is not really a number you want to get back on an exam. But, hey, more than the number, think like, I got the class average. I'm okay, right? That's the feeling I want you to leave with. You're this lone guy or gal who got 100, pat yourself on the back, right? Bunch of people, well, not a bunch, a couple of your other buddies, north of 90, right? Those of you guys living on the bad tail, I think you got to be pretty honest with your assessment. So when I'm saying bad, the average of 60, I don't know exactly what the standard deviations were, but if you're in that 40 range, you got to start thinking, did I put any effort in to get that 40? Did I work as hard as I possibly could to get that 40? Did I have an off night and I'm really way better than that? Like these are like conversations you got to start having with yourself of, is it time to cut bait on this course? Because, man, I got a 40 or a 36 and I owned it. That's what I deserved, and I don't know what's going on, and the rest of the material builds on this, so I'm going to get crushed. Like that's someone's reality, right? For some of you guys. Other people, if you didn't do that great, you're living down here, but you feel like, it was that one problem I just didn't do very well on. Or it was that plus I had a bad night and I'm better than that. I think I can get the class average on the next 2 exams. So if you're living down here still, but you think whatever that class average is on the next 2 that you can get that or better, you're going to be fine, right? You're going to still, assuming you've done your homework and quizzes, right? If you've done nothing, then you're kind of in a rough spot. But if you're down here, bad day, you think you can do at least the class average on the next 2, stick it out. If you ended up down here and you're struggling and you don't know really what's going on, the amount of work it's going to take to dig yourself out of that hole might be detrimental to the rest of your classes, right? So you got to think like, I know this is 3 credits of something I got to get done, but in order to pass this, if I fail everything else, you're really not any better off. So people like to email me, ask me what to do. It's like, I don't know exactly how hard you worked. I don't know what your ceiling is on these. I don't know how hard and how you're doing the other classes, like what you should give up on, what you should go for. So these are all hard things for me to just tell you, like in an email. Better drop, but I know. It's all, guys, I'm not trying to I know, if you got this back and you had a really low grade, you're worried about this stuff. Can I still pass this class? And I think the message I want you to leave with is if you do honestly feel like you know what's going on and you can do better, stick it out. If you feel like you really earned that grade and like, I don't know what's going on, it's time to cut and run. It's about as simple as I can make it, but again, if you're down there and you need some further deep dive, we can do that, right? Come find me. Those of you guys who are living in the happy zone, 80 plus, 90 plus, like, you're in a good spot. You know what you're doing. So keep it up. Don't let your guard down. This 62, I am going to do something as far as grade massaging. I don't know what that something is yet. So give me, yeah, don't clap yet. Before the next exam, I will know how we're going to try to fix the low number here to make everything work. Because I know for you guys, you like to be able to look at your scores in Canvas and say, what do I need on the final to get a B? What do I need on the final to get an A? And I want you to be able to have that feeling without just saying, well, he's going to do some massaging. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be okay. Like, I want you to at least know kind of numerically where you stand. I think it's a good thing to have, okay? That's all I'm going to say about that exam. Anyone have any other questions?
Do you have an estimation as to when the massaging will be done?
Yeah. The massaging, when will it be done? I got to think about how I want to do that. Right? Like, I've kind of kicked around some ideas. Like I said, I could just plus 10 everybody. These guys are going to be north of 100. All right? That kind of puts a Band-Aid on things. But what I like about the idea of shifting the weights of the exams is that those people who live down here, throw us out there. Each exam's worth 25, right? Exam 1, exam 2, and the final. If I change the weight to this, whichever one you do the worst on is 15 and the other two are 30. Now you've got like that carrot dangling. Like, hey, he didn't just give me 10 points. He said go out and do better on the next two. The only downside is for the person who gets 80, 80, 80 on all three exams, you really don't get any benefit of that, right? So it's like there's no perfectly fair way to just like give people scores up. But I kind of like the idea of throwing out and weighting the other two exams a little more, or whichever exam you do the worst on, weight that one the least. Okay? All right, so today, we're moving on. So settle in. As we're, thinking about where we are exam-wise, your chance at coming back is just a few weeks away, right? It's like November 8th. So what we're going to do is, today I'll finish up Chapter 4, so we'll have work energy done. Next week and the following week, we'll work on momentum and impact. So energy and momentum, these are our two shortcut techniques to solving these F equals MA problems without having to do F equals MA. So after that, though, then it is time again to start this whole process over. So, all right, power. So we've already talked about energy. We looked at work energy. Here is that's my mountain, or that's the graph of your grades. This one's 100. This one's 60s. Okay, so this is the mountain I'm driving up with my car. I'm gonna drive to the top, and I'm gonna stop there. Right? From a work energy standpoint, T1. V1 plus our non-conservative work, T2 plus V2. Right. So you think about kind of what we've got. The bottom of my mountain is my datum. I got to go some height. So if you think about starting and stopping at the top and the bottom, forget about kinetic energy. Potential at 1 is my datum. the work that I do to get to the top is mgh, right? This is how much work it's put in for me to go to the top of this mountain. Now, the interesting part about this is that the car I've drawn here is maybe like my Prius. Cranks out like 100-ish horsepower on a good day, right? So maybe for me to get to the top of this mountain with my Prius, it takes me an hour. But your guy's mom has a fancy car, right? You know, she's got a Tesla. She can hammer down and she's up there in 8 minutes. So it took me an hour, took your mom 8 minutes. Wasn't supposed to, okay. Either way. So, the work we're doing though, whether you're in a slow car or a fast car, is the same, right? But the power is the part we want to talk about today, is how fast can we do that work? So that work can be done in a certain amount of time, and you got to think about like a horsepower rating. Like that's the most obvious one that I think people see is like, hey, there's a car, 100 horsepower versus 400 horsepower. 400 is more than 100. So it's more powerful. It can make it up this hill at a faster rate or in a shorter amount of time. And that's the part we're going to talk about today. How quickly can we do this work? And that's essentially our definition of power. So, power is the change in work over the change in time. And if we're taking infinitesimally small steps, du dt. So, how much work are we doing, and how long did it take? This is ERB, the most beautiful building on campus, where my office is. When I was in grad school, the one guy from my lab, he walked in. We lived here, 5th floor. He walked in huffing and puffing. He's like, I got a challenge. Top to the bottom, ERB in 5 minutes. I said, I do that in 1 minute. Then I sat there and thought about it. I was like, oh shit, 1 minute? That's a long way, right? 12 stories, plus a basement, plus an extra set of stairs to get to the roof. Yeah, 14 flights of stairs to go up. 14 on the way up. That's a long way to go. I thought, minute, I got about 4.5 seconds per flight. Let's see if we can pull this off, right? So the work that I did, or the power output, is the change in work. How far did I go? I went from the basement to the roof, where you can't actually access the roof, so don't try. It's just a locked door. But the work I did, mgh. The time I gave myself, 1 minute. So, what is my power? My weight, mg, 175 pounds. The height, 185 feet. It only took me 57 seconds. Spoiler alert, nailed it. Did it in 57 seconds. It's painful. If any of you guys like run the 400, like you kind of get the idea. So the power I put in, the amount of work I did over the time. This was 568 pound-feet per second. Really close to 1 horsepower. Not bad, right? So, that's just our definition for power. How much work are we doing over a given time? we can look at this one more way that's useful to us. So this is kind of useful thing to do, number one. Our change in work. We know something about our change in work. If, maybe easier to write this way. Our work is the integral of force dotted with its displacement. Take the time derivative of both, or the derivative of both these, not time derivative. du for work, and the derivative of the integral, that will fall out. So I got force dotted with its displacement. If we go back to our definition now for power, du dt, and plug this in. Our du, F dotted dr over dt. dr dt, the change in position as a function of time, velocity. So the second way that we'll use power is force dotted with velocity. I have two different ways that we've got power that we can use. So we can either do force dotted with velocity or the change in work over the change in time. Both of these will have their value. So don't think, I just like this one best, I'm going to use that one all the time. Well, you're going to have to use both. Okay? Thinking about power units. Force is newtons. Velocity, meters per second. So Newton meter seconds. Newton meter is a joule. So joule seconds. Also a watt. So when you're given these in different forms, don't panic. SI units make sense. English units, you're screwed. They don't make any sense. Force, pound. Velocity, feet per second. Horsepower. (550 foot-pounds per second). Right. So if you're just given information, whether it's joules, whether that's watts, whether that's horsepower, whether that's foot-pounds per second, you're just going to have to do a little converting to get back and forth for what we need. Okay? All right, the last thing. Not a whole lot to lecture on today. Efficiency. We'll use epsilon. Efficiency is kind of, in this case, we'll use power. But for a lot of things, efficiency is what you get out over what you put in. Right? So every electric motor that you use, there's an efficiency rating. It's taking, say 100 units from the wall. It's outputting 98. So your efficiency rating on your electric motor would be 98%. So efficiency for us, zero to one. If you invent the motor with efficiency greater than 1, let me know. Totally in for that. I got some seed money that I'll send you guys. We'll do an example where we talk about efficiency for an internal combustion engine. So what you drive in your not mom's Tesla. 20%, 30% for the best ones. That's pretty shocking, right? So 30% of the energy that you're putting into that vehicle is pushing you forward. The rest, you're losing heat, friction. So kind of alarming when you think about that. All right. So that's all we got today. We're just going to cruise through a couple examples, looking at power and efficiency. Get you guys comfortable using our two definitions of power: force times velocity, or work done per time. So we've got a car, 1,500 kilograms. It's traveling up a slope at constant speed. Well, that's good to know. So it's, the mass of my car is 1,500 kilograms. And my velocity is constant. Knowing that the maximum power output of the car is 160 horsepower, so my power out is 160 horsepower. What speed can the car travel if air resistance is negligible? So we want to find our velocity. And knowing 1 liter of regular gasoline provides 34.8 megajoules of energy. How many liters of gas are required in 1 hour if we have an efficiency of 20%? So our efficiency, 20%. And 1 liter of gas contains 34.8 megajoules of energy. All right. So the second thing we want to find out is how much are we going to use in an hour. This first piece, that's really what we're doing power and efficiency wise. The second piece is a little bit of unit conversion. So, okay, let's see what we got. We're trying to find the speed. We're given power. We're getting close, right? So we think about what we know about power. The work done per time, or the force dotted with the velocity. So the power that I'm using, we kind of have that already. That's good. The work we're doing, well, we're going up a hill. And the time we're going up the hill, I guess we could probably relate that because we have the slope. We could figure out what that distance tangent to the path is versus the rise up. This one's maybe a little easier though. Force dotted with velocity. Velocity is what we want. Force, what's pushing on this car to get it up the hill. Ooh. We can get that from our FBD. So we'll use an FBD to get this. This we have, but we just need to do a little bit of conversion. All right. So P is equal to F dotted with V. Let's figure out what these forces are. Here's my slope. I've got a normal force. I've got the weight of my car. And I've got the force pushing this car up the hill. In the real world, we'd also have the drag force, right? That's proportional to velocity squared, or ish. So the faster you're going, the more drag you feel. today we're going to neglect that, just to make life a little bit easier for this problem. So, the power from the engine is what's forcing us up the hill. This is the F that we want to get. So I'll use a little rotated coordinate system. X, Y. I've got our angle here is theta. So this angle is also theta. Break this into its components. So if my sum of forces in the x direction, positive taking me up the hill, what do I have? I've got my force, and I've got a component from mg working down the hill, minus mg sine theta. This is going to be equal to our kinetic diagram, which in this case is just mass times acceleration in that x direction. Could have put drag in there too, if we wanted to complicate things. All right, this is the force I want. It's acting in the direction that we're traveling. So that's nice. This dot product will go away, right? But I got this pesky acceleration in the x direction to deal with. Well, luckily, the first thing we said was velocity is constant. So constant velocity, zero acceleration. It somehow magically arrived at its maximum speed and is just staying there. So force is equal to mg sine theta. And if we wanted to look at this in vector form, we would say that's in the I direction, where my little I is up the hill. So my power that the motor is putting out, F dotted with V. This is mg sine theta in the I dotted with V in the I. My velocity is also going just up the hill in the x direction. So the dot product of the i's will go to 1. And I can solve for velocity. V is equal to P over mg sine theta. And the only thing that makes this problem hard is entering these values and trying to figure it out with goofy units. So my power, 160 horsepower, divided by mg sine theta. Mg is, m was 1,500 kilograms. G was 9.81 meters per second squared. And then I've got sine of theta. I guess I didn't do what theta was. My slope, (15 feet up for every 100 feet over, or meters. It doesn't matter. We're just looking at the angle. So I could do tangent of theta, 15 over 100. Theta is about 8.53 degrees. Okay. So the other thing we need to do is what I've got here for velocity, kilograms times meters per second squared, that is a Newton. So I've got to change horsepower to get this in Newton meters per second. So what's my conversion between horsepower in watts or Newton meters per second? I'm going to jump back to that screen so you can see where it was. Okay, 1 horsepower is equal to 745 0.7 watts, and a watt is a Newton meter per second. So the velocity we get out of this, 54.66 meters per second, 122.3 miles per hour. That's pretty fast, right? That's not my Prius. Maybe on the way down the hill with the tailwind. But when I think about this, maybe the thing that we should consider is the fact that, hey, this drag force is proportional to velocity squared. At 122 miles an hour, it's pushing, right? So this assumption that the resistance due to air was negligible, kind of silly. If this hill was on the moon, we'd be in business, right? We wouldn't have any resistance due to drag. So just to keep that in mind, that's all. We've got our velocity that we're going. That's what we tried to figure out first. Part B, we wanted to figure out how many liters are we going to go through in 1 hour. So what we've used so far is we just used the output power from our car, 160 horses. We had the incline that we knew, so that gave us our force. We were able to figure out velocity. But now if I want to figure out how many liters of gas I need in an hour, this is where I got to bring efficiency in, because we were told that our engine is only 20% efficient. I guess the way this works in my brain is my power out is my change in work over time. And let me think about the work that I've done. So how much work am I going to do in 1 hour? So let this delta T go to 3,600 seconds. My power, that's my 160 horses. So I can rewrite this as, hey, how much work did we do? That's my output power times our time. That was 160 horsepower times 745.7 Newton meters per second per horsepower. And then times 3,600 seconds. So the amount of work that we cranked out in an hour, 429.5 megajoules of work. That was a lot of work, right? And then I want to think about efficiency. Efficiency out over in. So what I got out versus how much I had to put in. This is the amount of work that I got out. And this is the amount of work or energy that I need to put in. So I think of this as my input energy. So we can arrange this. My input energy was change in our output work. That's divided by our efficiency. When I just switch the variables around a little. And I get, for a 20% efficiency rating, 2,147.6 megajoules. That's the amount of energy I need to put into the car to get this amount of work done on the other side. Right? So how many liters? This is just a units problem now. I know how much energy I need, and I know that 1 liter contains 34.8 megajoules of energy. So if I've got to put in 2,147.6 megajoules, and I've got 34.8 megajoules in each liter, this is going to give me 61.7 liters or 16.3 gallons of fuel. So that's a heavy hour. But you're going up a mountain at 122 miles an hour. Maybe that's not too bad. So last thing, hey, how are we doing? What's our miles per gallon? We knew we were going 122.3 miles per hour. And we're going through 16.3 gallons in that hour. Seven and a half miles per gallon. That's a costly way to get up that hill. Maybe go a little slower. Maybe don't use all of your 160 horses just because you got them. Show a little restraint. You know, take your time. Use 80 horsepower. All right? So this problem, a lot of window dressing on this problem, but really, that's what I want you to get across. Power is force dotted with velocity, and that's what we used here. We had an idea of power. That was in the problem statement. We had an idea of force from our free body diagram. Velocity is what we were after. So just kind of breaking these things down. They might seem a little strange at first, but they're not too difficult. One more. We got a 50 kilogram crate. 50. Getting pulled up a 30-degree incline by a pulley system and a motor M. If the crate starts from rest, so V0, and we have a constant acceleration to obtain a speed of 4 meters per second after traveling 8 meters along the plane. Okay, that'll need some unpacking. Determine the power that must be supplied to the motor at this instant. Neglect friction, and our efficiency is only 74%. So we've got our crate, 50 kilograms. It is on a pulley. That is going to a motor. And I don't know, I'll just do this so it looks like my motor is attached to the ground. So my motor is not moving. All right. 30-degree incline. We're given our efficiency 0.74. Our initial velocity is 0. Our final velocity is 4 meters per second, and that's at 8 meters. And we're told that our acceleration is constant. Trying to figure out the power into this motor. That's what we're looking. Determine the power that must be supplied. So that's P in. All right. Let's start cranking. So we've got our two forms of power. And I just wrote the one equation for now, force dotted with velocity. Because to me, that's looking pretty promising already. Right? I think about what I've drawn is almost a free body diagram. Right? I've got some cable tension, I've got weights coming down, no friction. So I can get an idea of force moving us along. Our velocity, we're given as 4 meters per second. Our power is what we're trying to find. So the force dotted with velocity, this would be like my power out, right? This is my output that the motor's doing. And I can link power in to power out through efficiency. So maybe this is step one to get power out. And step two, we'll use efficiency to get power in. So just linking up what we've got. All right, so we're doing the first step here. Power out, force dotted with velocity. Free body diagram. We got mass and gravity fighting against us. I've got a normal force pushing up and two tensions pulling the box along. My kinetic diagram, I've got mass times acceleration. I'll call that my x direction up the hill, and mass times acceleration in the y direction, perpendicular to that. So I've just put a coordinate system on. So for our force vector, we want to know kind of what's powering us up this hill, or what's pulling us up this hill. So we're going to try to figure out what that pulling force is, our tension. And remember, this is a dot product, so I really only care about the pieces that are acting in the direction of our velocity. And our velocity is, again, sliding up this hill. So if I do sum of forces in the x direction, up the hill is positive. 2t, and then I've got my mg here. Here's our angle theta. So I've got minus mg sine theta equal to mass times acceleration in the x direction. I want to figure out this towing force T. So rearranging things, T is equal to, bumping this guy to the other side, pulling an m out, and then dividing by 2, half m ax plus mg sine theta. So I just move that over. Almost great. Good start. I know mg, I know theta. Ax, I'm told is constant. But that's all I got so far. So, constant acceleration, and I'm given initial and final velocity. The final velocity happens at a given distance. So we can use a constant acceleration equation. That relates velocity and positions. So that one, v final squared is equal to v initial squared plus 2 ac, my constant acceleration, times s final minus s initial, the distance I've slid. That we said was 8 feet. V0 we said was 0. V final we said was 4. So 4 squared is 16. Without doing any more algebra, 1 meter per second squared is our constant acceleration. So if I took that, plugged it back in for t, we know m of our crate, which I didn't write down, but it's 50 kilograms. We know theta is 30 degrees. The tension we have is 147.6 newtons. All right, great. We have T, but we want power. We want the power in. So, working through what we've got, we did all this to get our towing force, but now we can see what our power is to get our power out, and then we can use that to get our power in. So first, my power out, F dotted with V. Now your brain can absorb this two different ways. You could think that the power output at the motor is happening right here. So you've got a given tension that we just solved for, 147, and the velocity we're told is 4 meters per second, but that's down here. Right? So we can either look at the crate side or the motor side. The power happening on either end is going to be the same. So if I look on the crate side, I've got a given velocity, 4 meters per second, but now the forces acting on that is going to be 2t. So on the crate side, my output power is 2t in that I direction, dotted with 4 meters per second in the I direction. Or, if we want to look at the motor side, at the motor, we've only got 1t. And that's dotted with the velocity of that rope. Well, guess what? There's a pulley, 2 to 1 here, right? So, with that pulley, the crate's going to move half as fast as the rope does. So this is going to be 2 times 4 meters per second, also in the I direction. However you slice it, you're getting a 2, whether you want to do it on the crate side or whether you want to do it on the motor side with velocity. It's up to you. Whatever fits your brain better, go for that. My output power, after plugging in for T, 1181 watts. And then the input is what we need. Epsilon is power out over power in. We're told this was 0.74. So P in is equal to P out over 0.74. 1,596 watts. So I think from this one, really similar actually in the last one we did where we looked at free body diagrams to get our forces. We kind of knew something about velocity, or we were trying to get velocity. And then the only other thing we did here was this one has a cable, so we had to be a little clever in how we looked at that force. All right. That is all for the day. I'll see you guys next week.